Welcome to Too Fond of Books. My name is Janelle, and in this video I am going to share with you 6 book reviews. I've been reading a lot on NetGalley and Book Sirens. These are both websites where you can request advanced reader copies of books and they'll send you an e-copy to read for review. And so these 6 reviews are advanced reader copies from either Book Sirens or NetGalley. 5 of them are fiction, and then there's a bonus one at the end that is non-fiction. So let's start with Secrets of the Nile by Tasha Alexander. This is the 16th book in her historical mystery series, The Lady Emily Mysteries, and it takes place in Egypt in 1904. I really enjoyed Tasha Alexander's writing style. This is a series that I've read from the beginning. For the past few books in the series, she's been employing 2 timelines, which I've really enjoyed. The story from each timeline occurs at the same place where the story is set, but at different points in history. And there is always some connection between the current timeline and the past timeline. So in Secrets of the Nile, the 2 timelines are Egypt 1904, and that's told in the first person from Emily's perspective, and then ancient Egypt from the first person perspective of Merit, and that is it's close to where Emily is. She lives in an artist's village near the pyramids. So this is a village that was designed entirely for artists who are working on the pyramids and their families. And that was a really fascinating timeline. This second timeline, I enjoyed it just as much as the main one. Now, obviously, the main timeline got more page time, but I did really enjoy that second timeline as well. So here's the plot. Emily and Colin are vacationing in Egypt with his mother and his daughter. His mother reconnects with an old friend, and then a death occurs at that old friend's dinner party. The police suspect a servant, but Colin and Emily know that there is more going on. I really like the way that Colin and Emily investigate. It's all about talking with the people involved, learning the history, rooting out the secrets and the lies. So I really like them as an investigative pair. The setting was great. I loved the setting of Egypt. They're in the Valley of the Kings. They're near the Valley of the Kings because I love archaeology. So this was a great setting. And Colin and Emily are like out of their element. They don't have friends or connections nearby to help them with this investigation. And I always enjoy that as well. I really like the character of Lady Emily as a whole throughout this whole series. She is smart and courageous and kind, and she is not willing to accept the limits placed on women in the late Victorian and early Edwardian time periods. And so she's a character that I really do enjoy. I also really like how Emily and Colin work together. He is careful and protective, but he never prevents her from doing the things that she's good at, and I just think that they're great partners. I enjoyed the mystery of this one. Everyone at the dinner had motives for the murder, and the slow reveal of the truth was really satisfying. There was a gathering of suspects at the end, which I always love, and I figured out the solution, but that didn't take away from the enjoyment of this mystery for me, and I gave this one 4 stars. Next, I want to talk about The Bletchley Girls by Anna Stuart. This is a historical fiction that takes place in 1940. It starts in 1940. I have always been fascinated by the work that went on in Bletchley Park during World War II. Code breaking, mainly. So when I saw that this book was available, I immediately requested it. The Bletchley Girls tells the story of Steffi, Fran, and Ailsa, as they begin their secretive work at Bletchley Park during World War II. They each have a different speciality, which allowed a more rounded view of the work that went on at Bletchley Park. I loved the descriptions of the work at Bletchley, and I was pleasantly surprised when the action also moved for a couple of the characters to Malta and Egypt. So this is told from 3 points of three perspectives: Steffi, Fran, and Elsa. And the story covers 3 years of the war from the perspective of each woman. I found this book well written and engaging. However, the author did fall into the trap of modern day sensibilities. That is a huge issue right now with writers writing historical fiction or historical mystery. Is they just seem to not be able to resist that temptation of including modern day sensibilities. One thing that was mentioned in the book, it was called Column BQ, and this was 500 people that were chosen to evacuate from Bletchley Park to America in the event of invasion. And I thought that was so cool, and it sounds like it could be true. I'm curious to know if that was real or not, if that was a real thing. I think that's cool. So the characters, I felt, vividly brought to life the bravery and the courage of the many people who worked tirelessly and mostly unacknowledged at Bletchley Park during the war. And I did really enjoy my read, and I gave it 4 stars. Next up, we have Daggers at the Country Fair by Catherine Coles. This is the second Martha Miller mystery. It's a historical cozy mystery set in 1947 at the country fair in Winteringham. This is another one told in the first person. Daggers at the Country Fair is a historical mystery set in a small village in England in 1947. It's the second Martha Miller cozy mystery, and the story is told in first person from Martha's perspective. Someone has been murdered at the Winteringham Fair that Martha has been asked to open. And so, of course, she gets involved. The mystery was pretty good. I didn't figure out who the killer was. The author did do a good job of providing a wide variety of incredibly unlikable suspects. The side story, however, of Martha and her feelings for Luke was a bit repetitious. It was just repeated too often. So Martha has feelings for Luke, who is a vicar, and she feels it's inappropriate considering that she is still married, even though she has no idea where her husband is. He could be alive, he could be dead, she doesn't know. And so, yes, she's right. I mean, she needs to figure that out before she can marry somebody else. But it was just repeated so often, too often. It was just really annoying. Now, I do enjoy, I've said this before, a gathering of suspects at the end of a mystery, and that happened in this one. However, I did not understand why Martha felt that she needed to keep her conclusions a secret from Luke and from the inspector. She didn't tell anybody before she went into this gathering of suspects. And so then I also did not understand why the inspector allowed that to happen. Why didn't he insist that she tell him before it? I just didn't get that. So overall, this was an enjoyable historical mystery, and I gave it 3 stars. Next up is Death on the Pier by Jamie West. This is another historical mystery set in Brighton in 1933. This one, you could tell that the author was very knowledgeable about the theater world. The mystery happens in a theater in Brighton. And I thought that lent authenticity to the story. And so my question as I was reading through it was, is that knowledge going to play into the mystery? How much of a detailed knowledge of the theater world are you going to have in order to have this mystery? Or is that going to play into the mystery at all? Playwright Bertie Carroll drops in to watch one of his older plays only to witness the lead actress being killed on stage. His old school friend DCI Hugh Chapman is also on hand to begin an investigation. I thought this one had clever plotting, and it really played with our perceptions, and it was very tightly paced. It also had a gathering of the suspects, and ultimately I felt like the author's deep knowledge of the theater really did play into the mystery, and I appreciated that it was all, you know, tightly plotted and closely mixed like that. So the reader is brought along with the detective and Bertie as they try to solve the case, and the reader learns key information when they do. Jamie West is very knowledgeable, like I said, of the theater world, and it allowed the author to play with our perceptions, hiding clues and dropping red herrings subtly into the mystery. I also really enjoyed the historical note at the end of the book about the Palace Pier Theatre, which is a real theater, or was a real theater in Brighton. And so I gave Death on the Pier 4 stars. And then the last fiction that I want to review is Murder by the Book, edited by Martin Edwards. I loved this one. I am a huge fan of Golden Age detective fiction, and I am also a huge fan of biblio mysteries. And so this was the book for me. This is an anthology of 16 short stories, and it was right up my alley. I loved this collection. I really liked the format of this book. There was an introduction by Martin Edwards that was informative, and it introduced me to some biblio mysteries that I hadn't heard of before, and so that was great. I also really liked the brief bio of the author before each short story. I thought that was really, really helpful. So this contains, obviously I can't review this like a regular book, so I'm just going to tell you the 16 short stories in here. A Lesson in Crime by GDH and M. Cole. This is from 1933, and I liked that story. Trent and the Ministering Angel by E.C. Bentley from 1938. I liked that story too. A Slice of Bad Luck by Nicholas Blake from 1939. I liked that one. The Strange Case of the Megatherium Thefts by S.C. Roberts from 1945. I liked that one too. This is why this book got such a high rating from me, because I liked the vast majority of the stories in here, and that's hard to do for me. I'm a hard sell on a short story, and so Malice Domestic by Philip MacDonald from 1946. I liked that one. A Savage Game by A.A. Milne from 1950. You may recognize that name more so from the Winnie the Pooh stories, but he also wrote a full-length mystery called The Red House Mystery, which was really good. I liked that one. The Clue in the Book by Julian Simmons from 1952. This one I enjoyed, but not as much as the others. The Manuscript by Gladys Mitchell from 1953. The same, I enjoyed it, but not as much. A Man and His Mother-in-Law by Roy Vickers from 1934. I liked that one. Gray's Ghost by Michael Innes from 1956. I liked that, but not as much as the others. Dear Mr. Editor by Christiana Brand from 1958. I loved it. I loved that one. It was totally my favorite. Wow. Like, that one packed a punch. Wow. That one was phenomenal. Murder in Advance by Marjorie Bremer from 1958. I liked that one. A Question of Character by Victor Canning from 1960. I liked that one. The Book of Honor by John Creasy from 1965. I liked that one too. We Know You're Busy Writing by Edmund Crispin from 1969. I liked that one. And Chapter and Verse by Nia Marsh from 1973. And I liked that one too. So there wasn't a single one in here that I disliked. There were just 3 that I didn't like as much as the other ones. I will read anything published by the British Library Crime Classics collection, and I was so pleased to be given advanced access to this latest publication. I will definitely be buying it, and I highly recommend it. 5 stars. Okay, the bonus review is a non-fiction book called Victorian England's Best-Selling Author, The Revolutionary Life of G.W.M. Reynolds by Stephen Basdea and Maya Driver. Now, it's a little harder to review nonfiction, but I'm going to do my best here. This is published by Pen and Sword, which is a publishing house of history that I really like, this publishing house. So, George William MacArthur Reynolds lived from 1814 to 1879, and until I got this book, I had never heard of him before. In the preface, we learn that Basdea is a big fan of William Harrison Ainsworth, love that, who is also buried in Kensal Green. So Reynolds and Ainsworth and Wilkie Collins are all buried in Kensal Green. I need to visit this graveyard the next time I'm in London. Here is a quote from the preface. Aged 64 when he passed away, Reynolds is one of the most interesting characters in Victorian literary history and the author of what was probably the period's biggest-selling novel, The Mysteries of London, 1844 to 1848. That was when it came out. It was serialized, and then it was published in 4 volumes, which reportedly sold over 1 million copies. End quote. This book had 3 aims. To offer the first book-length biography on Reynolds, together with a discussion of his major works. To counter an accusation leveled against Reynolds while he was alive that he was a charlatan who only became a Democrat to sell more books. And 3, to provide a resource for scholars by including all of the articles that Reynolds wrote for his newspaper, Reynolds Political Instructor, which have long been out of print. And so if those were the author's 3 aims, then I say he succeeded. He definitely fulfilled those things in this book. This book turned out to be more political than I was expecting or I preferred. Reynolds did write fiction, but he also wrote a lot of nonfiction, and he was very political, and the book kind of tended more in that direction. I enjoy Victorian literature, and I had never heard of George Reynolds before I read this book. This history of the writings of this relatively unknown author was well researched and easy to read. And so I ultimately gave that book 3.5 stars. It was good, but it was more political than I was expecting. So there you have it. Those are 6 book reviews from advanced reader copies that I have received. Have you read any of these authors? I would love to chat with you in the comment section down below. Have you ever heard of George Reynolds? I know from watching some of Jennifer Brooks' videos, she read his book Necromancer, which I thought sounded fascinating. And so I am going to try and get my hands on some of his fiction. I know some of it's available on Project Gutenberg, so I'm going to give him a try. He does sound like he is very long-winded though, so as long as you're okay with that, go for it. But yeah, let me know if you've ever heard of him as a Victorian writer, and I will see you for another video soon.